DJ Noob is here with you on the Metal Time Radio podcast with my special guest, Big Bad Wolf, sir. Thank you for joining me. Glad to have you here.
Me. First of all, I gotta say, the beginning of the intro really scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, I meant to warn you, but it's Halloween. Got to spook you a little bit.
It was as soon as the loud music hit, I was like, oh crap, because I didn't expect it to be so loud.
Right. Yeah, people get caught off guard a little bit with that. So we decided a while ago, I think it was during the Godzilla live stream that I did.
Yep, it was back when Rob came on.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit, and we both realized we're really big werewolf fans and big fans of the genre, the movies. So we thought the great brains that we have that we would do a show specifically for werewolves, and I'm happy to do it, man. I'm happy you're here, and
it's an honor to be here. This will be the second time I'm on any kind of other channel.
Nice.
I was on Rob's a while back when he did like a Godzilla stream on everyone do their own pitch for a Godzilla movie. I decided because everyone was so scared. I think everyone was just nervous or didn't exactly know how to go about it.
Right.
So the funny thing is, I just came back from a wedding, and then I didn't plan to get on. I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'll go ahead and get a crack at it, and maybe I can use that as an icebreaker to get everyone else to get on.
Yeah. How long have you known him? Because you're a moderator on his YouTube channel, right?
I'm not a moderator. I'm just a member.
Oh, okay. So how long have you been following Rob?
2 years. I came on probably around the time when Godzilla King of the Monsters came out.
Gotcha. It's about the time I discovered
Samurai
too, so.
And so I've been following him, and I'm like, you know what? This guy kind of makes sense. I mean, because of him, I was able to go look beyond my fandom. So he kind of taught me a few things on that, because I was a pretty diehard fan, probably like most Toho extremists. But then after a while, I started looking into it. I'm like, you know what? He's right. And I started really trying to branch off and trying to see instead of trying to look at one part of the picture, I decided to take a step back and see the whole picture that he's been trying to show people.
Yeah, he's really good at that for sure. So I love his channel. I love Rob, and he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's pretty genuine, pretty straightforward and honest. Doesn't put up with a lot of crap, but he's also not afraid to roast his viewers.
Yeah. So, we're going to first start to get into a little bit of the lore and the mythology of werewolves. I know you had an article you pulled up about Old Stinker. So we'll get into that in a few minutes. But I'm going to play a real quick clip. It's about 3 minutes long. Did you say you got around to say the Bray Road Beast documentary or no?
No, I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime, but you may have to pay for it. But it's not a big ordeal. But it's a good doc if you ever get a chance to check it out. It actually might be on Tubi too, so you might check there. But I tried to look it up online. I couldn't find it. I'll see if I can find it later. Maybe I can find a link. But here's a quick clip from that, and we're just gonna check it out real quick.
Wisconsin is Dairyland. For a state with over 1 million milking cows, there's no love for a predator like the wolf. Since the 1800s, it's been open warfare. By the 1960s, the wolf was officially exterminated from Wisconsin. Some wonder if a few managed to live on and not only survive, but transform. Like insects or rodents that defy extermination, only to come back stronger.
It might be some kind of natural wolf-wolf hybrid that has adapted to run or walk on its hind legs when it suits its purposes for some reason.
Whatever the cause, by the 1980s, Wisconsin was in the midst of a flurry of reports about a bizarre wolfman beast. That put Steve Kruger on the front lines of the hunting zone. After college, he got a job working sanitation, clearing Wisconsin roads of deer and roadkill.
I've spent a lot of time in the woods and seen a lot of crazy things. This beats all of it by a long shot. Back in 2006, I was contracted to pick up the dead deer carcasses along the roadways throughout the state. There's no precipitation. It was just a really nice, cool evening. While I was driving and I came across a small deer carcass. It was a small 80-pound doe, so I threw down the tailgate, picked up the deer and tossed it into the back on top of the ATV ramp. And I hopped back into my cab, got the clipboard out and started filling out the paperwork.
What had been a quiet night was about to receive a jolt.
At first, when the truck shook, I thought it was the wind. So I ignored it the first time, started filling out the paperwork again.
When the truck rocked again, it couldn't be ignored.
And really felt like something heavy got into the back end of the truck. And that's where I saw the creature. The whole entire creature was about 7 feet tall, looked like basically a large wolf head on top of a bear's body. This was not a bear.
Then, it made a move toward the front of the truck.
Scared the dickens out of me. I became panicked and I realized I just needed to get out of there. It came down to a choice of fight or flight, and I chose the flight.
So yeah,
I have heard. Oops, I was just going to say I have heard of the folklore on the Beast of Prey Road, and a while back there was a movie that they did. I think it was just like one of those channel exclusive movies, like sci-fi chiller stuff like that. Because I remember seeing it, but the werewolf in there didn't look anything like that. It kind of looked. It had white fur, and it basically looked like a feral version of Bigfoot, basically.
Yeah, it tends to vary with the Bray Beast, and actually, it like you said, it influences horror movies. I know there's a couple out there about it, and then there's actually bands that are called Bray Beast and stuff like that that talk about the folklore. But yeah, the images, it's almost like aliens. Like it always varies with how it looks, and yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting story and the folklore, and a lot of the action happened back in the 90s. So I don't know how much of it still persists today, but that's just one of those things in America that, you know, they keep saying like it's a creature that will actually, like there was a moment in the doc where a woman says she's driving and she literally sees the creature running side by side with her car. Now, obviously, it was a reenactment, but I mean, just imagining something like that happening is like probably pretty terrifying in the middle of the night. So, but you know, it's all lore. You don't really know if it's true or not, or if it's just some wild animal or whatever. But certainly adds to the whole werewolf mystique.
Yeah, it's probably like anything else. So it's kind of like how in Scotland and Lake Nessie there's the Loch Ness Monster, and Vermont and Lake Champlain there's Champ the Loch Ness Monster. In most of our areas, there's Bigfoot. Actually, in my hometown, there's this guy that works at this dance studio, and what he likes to do every year is he'll dress up as Bigfoot just to prank Bigfoot hunters, like just to screw with them. But he only do it around Halloween season, and just hearing that, I just laughed at the reaction of people when they look and they realize it's not Bigfoot, or they're thinking, oh my gosh, we saw Bigfoot. Then people are like, no, they're trying to show photos. And then you probably just see the guy just in the background just laughing at him, just like, I can't believe that actually worked.
Right. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, hopefully he doesn't get his ass shot, but.
And then, of course, there's also the Mothman in, like, what, Pennsylvania, somewhere like that?
Yeah, you got that. And then, actually, that might be West Virginia, maybe? But then you have like
around that area,
the Jersey Devil and Jersey and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different lores of stuff out there.
I forgot about the Jersey Devil, and I was just seeing something on that on Facebook like the other day.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you just never know if it's based in any kind of reality, but apparently it's coming from somewhere. So I know that later on we're gonna be doing our top 5 werewolf movies, but do you have any like runners up, a couple runners up that you thought would almost break into your top 5?
Well, I'd say maybe for action itself, I'd say the Underworld series, just because they really helped with making the werewolves look pretty BA, just very beast-like, and just they were just complete savage.
Yeah, I think for me, I had a few listed. Certainly, more recently, The Wolf of Snow Hollow. I know that Samurai and I were talking about that movie the other day, where it's not true werewolf film, but it does definitely has a part in it, and it's pretty fun.
It's
then, of
just a
course,
fun watch.
right, and then of course going back to '81, where it's not necessarily your full stand-up size werewolf, but Wolfen from 1981 is a really fun movie that deals with sort of the werewolf lore a little bit. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff out there that's not so perfect in my top 5, but there are movies I do enjoy for sure.
Yeah, I'd say with my issue is, as you know, as I've talked with you before, I'm pretty picky on my werewolf movies. Like, there's this new werewolf movie that came out, I think, this year, but it's like a full-on comedy, and I'm like, I'm not gonna watch it. That's all comedy.
Yeah, it always depends for me. Like, I actually got a chance to see Werewolves Within a couple of years ago, and it was okay, but it just it doesn't really. I just watched I Am Lisa the other day. I did a review on the podcast for next week for that, and that was not very good. I always give credit for directors and actors that try to make attempts at werewolf films, but sometimes they just go off the rails and they don't really make a lot of sense with what they're trying to do. But like you, what's that?
So like Big Bad Wolf.
Yeah.
That's a movie I've mentioned to you many times.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were trying to do there, but in my opinion, like, of course, they say monster movies are B movies. That movie is a C to an F movie. That is nowhere near the B area.
Oh yeah, I think I rated I Am Lisa like an F. Like, I mean, I watched it, but I wouldn't go back to it. It's just not very good.
When I was young, I saw it. I'm like, you know what, this looks good. And after watching it, it's like when you're young, you don't know any better. But later on, you find stuff to think of it. And I'm like, that was such a terrible movie. It's like they really didn't take the werewolf lore seriously. Like, one, they have the werewolf sound like a bison and like a lion at one point.
Right.
They have the werewolf talking, and just the CGI transformation was just outright terrible.
Yeah. I guess I got kind of lucky as a kid. I mean, I was an 80s child, so, American Wolf in London and the Howling, that was some of my early entries into werewolves and scared the shit out of me. So,
yeah, I can see how. I mean, especially that, I think the freakiest part in the Howling would have been that sex scene between Bill and that lady that basically infected him.
Yeah.
Just watching that now, I'm like, if I watched that as a child, I'd probably be scared to death just because of how everything went out and just how they went from just being human to slowly looking more and more like, in my opinion, Bill looked a lot like Gyra from War of the Gargantuars. Like, just looking at him, I'm like, holy crap, that's kind of freaky.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I forget the woman's name, so maybe someone in the comment section can tell us. But I remember she looked a lot like a feral version of Fiona from Shrek.
Yeah, I think when I watched The Howling, like, this guy really just did it for me. Just terrifying, and the transformation was nuts.
Oh, yeah. That's still, to this day, one of the best werewolf transformation movies, especially among the fans. That is probably one of the freakiest and most horrifying transformations. They did very well, but I feel like they could at least added more bones cracking sounds.
Yeah.
Because the only time you hear that is when the claws are coming out, the ears are coming out, and I think when you see
the
snouts just starting to form. But I tell you what, the most spine-chilling part that kind of gave jitters down my spine was just when the ears started coming out. I'm like, oh, that looks so painful. Just there's ears here, and now you just see ears just forming from the top of the head.
Right. So you were telling me a little bit about some of the history that you came up and found with the old stinker. So what's the story behind that?
I'll try to tell you as much as I can remember, because I'm trying to find the article that I remember pulling up, because shout out to a good friend of mine who is my former high school English teacher. He brought this to my attention through an Apple TV podcast. Well, it was a podcast. I watched that, so I'm like, I better do more research on this, because I also want to do my own werewolf series. So I'm like, you know what? I could probably use this as inspiration to something. And so basically with Old Stinker, it's probably within the old English times, probably back in England, in the probably around 11. I'm probably way off, but probably around 11 to maybe 1700s. There would be this old whole werewolf that would be that would always wander around graveyards. Apparently, he would dig up dead bodies and eat the corpses of the dead, and that's how he got his name. Not because of what he ate, but because the decaying breath that resulted just from eating those corpses. That's how Old Stinker got the name. And that's all I can remember, because there was a 30-minute video I found that I remember watching on him. So if you want, you can watch it on your own time, because I'm not sure if YouTube probably has rules on that.
Right. Yeah, I'll check it out for sure. I think I saw it when you gave me the link, so I'll check it out later on.
That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the werewolf lore and history seems to dive into where a lot of the werewolves, many so-called werewolves, were like actual serial killers, and they were just kind of like crazed dudes. And I know there's like a movie called Where, it's like WER, that kind of plays off of that whole like serial killer theme. But even stuff like the Beast of Gavadon that was taken from Brotherhood of the Wolf, like the whole theory behind that. So even though the movie didn't have a werewolf, it was implied that's what it was going on in terms of like the mythology behind it, and the deaths and everything else. So it's interesting how history has kind of played off of the werewolf theme and where it's coming from and how it's coming about. But there seems to be like all over the world, like different versions of the werewolf. Like there's one like the bedbug werewolf, and a bedburg, bedburg.
Yeah, I was just reading on that article you sent me.
Yeah. And
the number one thing I remember too is one thing that disappointed me. I'm surprised, like in mythology, so like it mentions Greek mythology. I'm disappointed it doesn't mention the Roman mythology on Romulus.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is when we mention movies like Wolfen, there's a bit of like Native American mythology in that. So the shape-shifting, as like, Native Americans look like werewolves as more of a spirit, like your spirit, once you pass away, you go into an animal of some sort, and sometimes a wolf is that animal. So that's another part of that lore. That's a whole different type of mythology, but it's out there.
I know they believed in skinwalkers, which is basically werewolves.
Right.
I remember seeing that movie. I remember seeing a skinwalker movie on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was like this little 9-year-old boy was to hope to stop the war, because there were these two families at war with each other, and this family was trying to protect them from the enemy werewolves, because he was the only hope to stop the war and to end everything.
Yeah, it's interesting because even with the article I showed you, they talk about how even though in modern days werewolves are nothing more than, at least in terms of most people's belief systems, just popular horror icons, but they have like werewolves have a cult following. That's us, So it's interesting seeing stuff like that. I do have a video a little bit about history on this. It's like about 12 minutes, but we'll sit and watch this as well, and then we'll start. What's that?
I was gonna say like how the whole mythology got started was back in Viking times. You heard the berserkers, right?
Yep.
They always wore like fur pelts like bear, wolves, and all that. That's how it all got started, was because they would wear that. And so when they would see them coming off the ships, the people just saw them as like these huge animal-like monsters, and that's how that all got started. So that's why there was also something called the werebears, because some of the Vikings also wear pelts and the heads of bears.
Yep.
Much like how some of them would wear the pelts and heads of wolves. Yep. And that's how people started getting the whole idea that, oh, they must exist because of this, and really, they were probably scared out of their minds, so all they could think of is, oh, crap.
Did you ever see 13th Warrior?
I don't think I have.
Check it out if you ever get a chance. It's Antonio Banderas, but it's all about basically Northmen, and even though Banderas is like a Middle Eastern guy, he's going on this trek with these Northmen to find out what's going on at this village, and sure enough, they're fighting werebears. And so, but the people that are in fear of these creatures believe that they're creatures until later on they discover they're just men. But this video I have does point to that fact you brought up about the Vikings and the berserkers and stuff wearing wolf heads and stuff like that to intimidate their enemies. So let's give this a whirl.
All right.
If I were to ask you what a werewolf is, it is likely that those of you who have never read the stories or seen the movies would still be able to tell me the basics. It's someone who can turn into a wolf, something about a full moon, and if you run into a silver bullet, you're dead, right? Not exactly a fountain of knowledge, but these are the things that we all know. Today we're going to examine why werewolves have become such an iconic figure in popular culture, where they originated from, and why it's come to this.
You don't live in the world you think you do.
Oh no, not this. No! Why?
No, that wasn't porn. Those are just some modern day werewolves. To understand the origins of werewolves, we have to first delve deep into their rich history. Though it is unclear where and when the legend of the werewolf originated from, there are some scholars who believe they first appeared in the Epic of Gilgamesh, when Gilgamesh himself jilted a potential lover because she had turned a previous mate into a wolf. Werewolves also made an appearance in Greek mythology with the legend of Lycaon. Lycaon did not believe that Zeus was an all-seeing god, and decided that he would test him by sacrificing one of his sons and serving him to Zeus for dinner. Not exactly father of the year, but Lycaon had over 50 children, and it's likely he didn't care much for them. Upon discovering the tainted dish, Zeus was furious with Lycaon and turned him and his sons into wolves. The concept of men becoming wolves or animals has existed for centuries. In the 13th century Icelandic work, the Volsunga Saga, men were shown wearing the skin of wolves in order to fight like them. The Norse berserk warriors charged into battle wearing nothing but the pelts of animals, as they believed this emboldened them. There have been some experts who claim that their behaviour may have been caused by a plant called bog myrtle, one of the main spices used in Scandinavian alcoholic beverages. The berserk warriors being drunk would explain why they were running around almost butt naked in animal fur screaming. Or maybe that was just a regular Friday night for a Viking. Most of us have heard of the witch hunts that took place in the 16th century, but the less well-known werewolf hunts took place in the same period. Interrogations of werewolves often involved peeling back a person's skin to see what was underneath, as it was a common belief that werewolves turned their skin inside out when in human form. The 16th century saw a rise of people claiming to be werewolves when committing murders and other heinous crimes. In 1589, in the sleepy town of Bedburg, just outside of Cologne, Germany, a man named Peter Stump was executed for cannibalism. Responsible for over a dozen murders, Stump claimed that he was in possession of a belt that allowed him to turn into a wolf. So how does one become a werewolf? Well, if we're going by the earliest literature, then people were turned into werewolves as a form of punishment. If you behave like a beast, then the gods would use lycanthropy to turn you into one. When lycanthropy was used as a punishment, the transformation was almost always permanent. Though there are stories where the offender was turned into a wolf for a number of years, usually 7 or 9, and once they had done their time, they turned back into a human and the curse was lifted. In Norse and Germanic folklore, becoming a werewolf is not seen as a punishment, it's more of a gift, granting you increased strength and speed. These stories describe a belt made from the skin of a wolf that allows the wearer to become one. In these depictions, the transformation is voluntary and not determined by the phase of the moon, but if the belt is destroyed, the ability to transform disappears. There are other folktales where becoming a werewolf requires the removal of one's clothing. They can only return to their human form once they put on the clothes they were originally wearing. A French tale written in the 12th century features a baron named Bisclavret, who vanishes every week for several days. No one, including his wife, knows where he goes. He eventually tells his wife his secret, that he is a werewolf and that his clothing is the secret to his transformation. Terrified of what she's just heard, his wife consults with a knight who she happens to be having an affair with, and the two decide to steal the baron's clothes. Unable to transform back into his human form, the baron does not return. His wife marries the knight, and together they live long, happy lives. Is probably what I would say if this tale did not contain werewolves. The baron eventually returns in his werewolf form, and upon seeing his wife, he bites her nose off. She is later banished along with the knight, and their children are cursed to be born without noses. These depictions of werewolves are personally my least favourite. Their reliance on their clothes makes them feel weak and vulnerable.
Agreed.
In modern depictions, lycanthropy is most commonly shared through the bite or scratch of an existing werewolf. There is an endless list of ways that one can become a werewolf. But a rather common trope that is carried throughout the ages is that committing an unspeakable act will curse one with lycanthropy, the taking of an innocent life being the most common. There are also those who are unlucky enough to be born a werewolf. If we take a look at Terry Pratchett's book series Discworld, we can see that werewolves are shown to be their own race, much like goblins and dwarves.
Could you be lunch?
How was I to know the City Watch's finest sergeant was a werewolf?
The full moon being required for a werewolf to transform is something that we see a lot less nowadays, as it's become pretty common for werewolves to transform when and where they please. The transformation process itself has changed drastically throughout the years, from not being mentioned much in early literature to the spectacle it's now become in modern film and television. The transformation appears in great detail and is almost always depicted as being extremely painful. We see bones elongate and change shape, skin ruptures and tears, and the transformation can last for several minutes. And sometimes you just grow some facial hair. Gotta love Teen Wolf, right? The results of the transformation have varied throughout the years, with the more traditional half-man, half-wolf appearance being replaced by the enormous monsters that we have become accustomed to seeing today. But why exactly are the movies choosing to dismiss the human element to the werewolf in favour of the savage beast? I think for the most part, this just boils down to the fact that they can. Because of the evolution of special effects, it's much easier to show a gruesome and convincing transformation, and through CGI the werewolf can be shown as this large terrifying monster. Sometimes you're left with a confusing mix of both monster and man.
It's like a rip off from Aliens right there.
You know, I was
Maintaining some of their human features
Company
when they
of
transform
Wolves.
makes it much easier for us as the audience to be able to relate to the werewolf, as we can see the conflict between their humanity and the primal instinct of the wolf. We often see werewolves who struggle to accept or even control their lycanthropy, and it's because of this redeeming feature that the audience feels compassion towards
There's
them.
also Ares.
On the other hand, you have franchises like Underworld, where it's an all-out war between werewolves and vampires, and you have these huge hulking alpha wolves which we have no attachment to whatsoever, but it works perfectly fine in their universe. So we've established that the appearance of the werewolf depends on context, and despite which one you may prefer, you can argue that they all have their place. Except these
That looks
ones.
goofy, even though it's 1940, so
How does one end the werewolf curse? The simplest way to end the curse is to die. The only downside to this option, of course, is that you're dead, which kinda sucks, I guess. There are those who believe that a potion made from wolfsbane can cure lycanthropy, but wolfsbane is also poisonous to werewolves, so take too much, and you're dead, which we've already established is bad. Calling a werewolf by their birth name while they're a wolf can cure them. This is personally my least favourite of all the cures, as it just seems way too easy. A much more believable cure for someone who's been turned is to kill the werewolf that turned them. There are also many people who just believe there is no cure. So this leads us into the methods of killing a werewolf. Surprisingly enough, things that would kill a human will also kill a werewolf. The problem lies within getting close enough to do so. Werewolves are able to regenerate, so if you do not kill them quickly, it is unlikely that you will kill them at all. It is widely believed that werewolves have a strong aversion towards silver, and a silver bullet to the heart or removing their head with a silver blade will kill them. We've already mentioned that wolfsbane is like poison to a werewolf. This serves as a good way to slow down and immobilize a werewolf, and in large amounts or injected directly into their heart, wolfsbane can kill a werewolf. The easiest way to kill a werewolf is to find them when they're in their human form, as this is when they are at their most vulnerable. However, with werewolves being able to transform whenever they please, this may not be the case anymore. When a werewolf does eventually die, their corpse will often return to their human form. So we've arrived at our final question. Why are werewolves so popular? Sex appeal. Yep, I said it. Werewolves are strong, assertive, rugged, alpha male type characters who we find attractive, and most men aspire to be a little bit more like. It's not just male werewolves though. Films like Ginger Snaps and Blood and Chocolate feature female werewolf characters who display the same attractive qualities. In modern day stories, werewolves and vampires are natural enemies. The reasons for that.
Which one's that?
Van Helsing. That's what that is with Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
That one's an honorable mention, guys. You asked about my honorable mention. That's an honorable mention.
Yeah, I think I only disliked Dracula. I disliked his design, but I did like Hugh Jackman's werewolf transformation. I thought that was great.
I think it was Ginger Snaps. I think I've only seen a couple of movies, but that was back when I was a teenager. They were pretty decently good. One part I remember that I feel was so well done, but that I felt was good when she walked out and started feasting on the deer carcass. Because I'm like, you know what? They should be showing that more often, as I feel like if you're a werewolf, like say, if the person is a werewolf in the world where werewolves would exist, they should at least have some parts of them acting feral, because now they have that within their mind, because they're now they transform to a werewolf, that they should have some of that in their mind, because as they transform in and out, it should be causing some kind of damage to whichever lobe it is, and it's kind of affecting it, causing them to slowly become more and more feral and wolf-like or animal-like, as you would say.
Yeah, I thought
they kind of like that touch.
Yeah, I thought it was funny he was mentioning the sex appeal, and I wasn't even thinking of a mower or anybody else in the male species, but I was going all like, you know, Catherine Isabel, Ginger Snaps, or even.
I was just laughing as soon as you showed like Joe Manganiello. I'm just like, oh boy,
yeah.
they're gonna bring up Twilight again,
right? Or even Anna Paquin. You know, it's like. My.
Yeah, I wish I would have went back and watched that before we did this, because it's been a long time since I've seen one of those movies. Not sure if I finished them, but I remember watching them back when the Sci-Fi Channel would have a marathon of werewolf movies, and the Ginger Snap series was always one of the top ones up there.
Oh yeah, definitely. The first one's just amazing, totally amazing. So let's get to the rest of this and see what he's got.
Their hatred vary, but it does guarantee an epic conflict between two of the night's most deadly predators. So those of you who dislike vampires will probably like werewolves. And of course, some people just like big scary monsters, myself included. Like every other popular monster, the werewolf represents more than just a vicious beast that scares us. Where we choose to suppress our darkest desires, the werewolf either embraces them or struggles to fight them, a concept that we can relate to. They represent the hidden evil in a person, the idea that everyone has an inner beast waiting to be unleashed. If you've enjoyed this video, then please consider leaving a thumbs up, as it
Yeah, so it got me thinking though, because going back to like American Wolf in London, or even there's an episode in Creepshow on Shudder, the new Creepshow series. They have a werewolf episode, and it all deals with like Nazi werewolves. So in history, the Nazis actually did use werewolf lore to try to intimidate their enemies, like Party SS and all the stuff like that. So
that would explain the blitzkrieg they did.
Right. And so it's very interesting that that the werewolves play a factor in history when they really didn't even exist, but for whatever purpose, they knew that it would strike fear in their enemies. So it's very interesting how that came about.
Very interesting, because it just kind of shows how each culture tries to find numerous ways to strike fear into the enemy, just to make themselves appear more godlike, or make themselves appear more unkillable, to where the enemy would be so shaken that they're like, screw this, we don't want to mess with them.
Right. All right, let's get into our top 5 list of werewolf movies. You got your top 5?
Yeah, I can think of my top 5 right now.
So let's start with number 5. Who's your number 5?
Number 5 would be Stephen King's Silver Bullet.
Well, you and I probably agree a little bit there. I have actually a tie for my number 5. I have Ginger Snaps and Silver Bullet at number 5. I think Gary Busey is amazing in Silver Bullet. Corey Haim is great, of course, as the kid. And the werewolf design, it's okay. It's effective.
It still makes him look very wolfish like. It just made him appear more man than wolf.
Right.
But I definitely liked how they had the werewolf picking them off one by one. Like, as soon as they're trying to search for him, like, what the heck is going on? And you just see the hunter go, it's under the fog, and then he gets pulled, and then the werewolf just pulls him and starts. I think that one was that the one that had his son get killed by the werewolf?
Yeah. It's like the kite, the blood on the kite and stuff. Yeah.
I think he was the one, or maybe it was someone else that appeared to be like him. But I remember as soon as that happened, everyone started going nuts, because I think one person shot someone else, then that person got killed. Everyone scattered, and the werewolf was just picking them off one by one.
Yeah, and I think the bartender, he had that bat that said the Peacemaker, and the werewolf got a hold of it and started beating him with it.
Oh, yeah.
That movie's a lot of fun. And it's funny because I think I want to say it was rated PG. I don't know though. I have to go back.
I think it had to have been rated R.
You would think it would because of all the violence, but the 80s was kind of funny sometimes.
There was some gory moments in there, and something that in most of the movies that were based on Stephen King stories,
right,
pretty much rated R, except for I think it was Final Destination. It was something like that Stephen King did that was like PG-13, but everything else I remember was either not rated or it was rated R.
It was probably R, but I think because it just has that kind of kiddie feel about it, because it sort of centers around Corey Haim's character.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of why I kind of felt like, man, this is almost
actually, I think it centers more around the little girl, because the girl.
The sister. Yeah.
One thing I wish is that they would have put more emphasis onto the person behind the werewolf, because all it did was give you hints, maybe one scene when you see him at the church. But other than that, you don't know who he is, and you have a good idea, but you don't know who he is till at the end. after, I think it was Corey Haynes' character. He's the kid in the wheelchair, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He shot the werewolf in the other eye, and then that's when Gary Busey's character kind of realizes that that was the preacher. I feel like we could have seen more like maybe the preacher at one point at the altar confessing, praying to God, begging him to help save him from this devil that's inside of him, begging to forgive him for all the atrocities he's committing that he's not trying to.
Yeah, I have my wife got me the graphic novel called Cycle of the Werewolf, and it's Stephen King, and it actually kind of dives in more to the Reverend's character in that. I don't have it on me, unfortunately. She packed it away somewhere, but it's really nice graphic novel. It's got like lovely pictures and stuff and artwork in there. And when I was reading, I was like, man, this is good stuff. This is like a little bit darker than the actual movie. So I was like,
I always like stuff like that.
Right.
It ends up being darker than the movie itself.
Mm-hmm. So what'd you have at number 4?
Number 4, I am going to say 2010's The Wolfman. I did like the design, but I loved the story and how they did everything. The transformation and the werewolf scenes. I definitely liked how they did that there. I also liked how it seemed like, I'm not surely mistaken, you can correct me on this one, but I feel like it was mainly practical effects with maybe a little bit of CGI in there. Especially in that video we watched, we saw that CGI played a role in that movie.
Yeah, well, it's probably one of those films where CGI and practical effects kind of intertwine. So it's probably a little bit of both. But yeah, that the scene where Del Toro is being in a chair and they're all around him and they're all talking about how crazy he is and everything, and then he starts transforming.
And he's begging them to
yeah,
please get out of here. You're in danger. You don't know what you're getting yourselves into.
Right. And it's funny, too.
It was fantastic, but my favorite part was Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, yeah. Anthony's always great. And I was kind of surprised when I found out he was another werewolf in the film, but the speed that they had was amazing. Like, they were very fast. But
oh, yeah, definitely. I love the fight scene between those two.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, too, is like this is probably one of the rare times that I actually like the design of the Wolfman. Usually it's the other way around. I always like the more wolf-looking creature. This was one of the few times that I thought that the Wolfman looked really good. The scenery and the cinematography was great in the film. It was really dark and atmospheric. I love all that. So it was really nice. It was a nice surprise. I went to see that in the theater, so...
Yeah, I liked it because it wasn't black comedy like American Werewolf in London or The Howling, because both were basically black comedy films. So I like that one because they actually found to make it dark, to have that horror aspect and staying true to it. Again, this is probably the only werewolf movie where I actually bit the bullet and decided, you know what, I don't like the design, but I like what they're doing with it.
Right.
Another good sequence was when the werewolf got trapped underground, and they didn't realize until like, guys, he's using the underground to his advantage, because he's just finding ways to kind of like dodge the bullets, run around. I think a couple of them actually fell through the trap, and he used that to his advantage to kill them one by one.
Yeah,
that was just a nice touch to it.
Yeah, it was really well done. My number 4, and we talked a little bit about it, is Bad Moon.
Bad Moon.
Yeah. I love everything about this film, and it's like you mentioned it before with some of the other stuff you've seen, that in the 90s, I think it was around when it came out, I saw it on Sci-Fi or one of those like USA to whatever channels, and I sat down, I just started watching it, and man, it terrified me. At the time, it was on TV, so it wasn't like I had seen it on VHS or anything. So when I saw it, I was like, God damn, this is really gory and it's really scary. And I liked the design of the wolf and its practical effects for most of it until that CGI part that we talked about.
Yep.
But the story's good. You got Michael Paré, who was just in Headless Horseman, one of Master Chaos's new movies. He's with his girlfriend in the tent. And I think they're in South America or something. And
yeah, something like that. It's like, I think it's probably Chile or something like that.
Yeah. And so they get attacked, and all you see is like her just like get grabbed and taken out of the tent, and it's just gory as hell. I love that.
Yeah, fun fact, I'm pretty sure you probably know this, but to everyone that doesn't know it, that movie is actually based off a novel called Thor, and it's in the dog's point of view, and the dog's name is Thor.
And that's a fun thing about the film is the dog. Like, that was another surprise when I watched it, is that the dog became a central character in the film. And I loved like the whole, the dog goes up to the trailer, takes a piss on it, and then later on, Perry goes by his doghouse and takes a piss on that. It's like marking their territory type thing. A pissing match between both of them.
My favorite thing was when the werewolf came back because that con artist came trying to get the dog in trouble, and the werewolf just ripped him apart. Like the werewolf was like, you're giving this family a hard time. That's my family. You leave them alone. Yeah. Like if anyone's gonna be giving them trouble, it's gonna be me. Like instead of that, or it seemed like Ted still had that consciousness in him. Like even though I'm still in this feral state, I still have enough control to at least do this to save them the trouble of dealing with that guy. Because early in the movie, he tried to get them in trouble because the dog attacked him. He's like, I'm going to sue him and get that dog in the pound. And the woman happened to be a lawyer. She goes, you teased that dog into attacking you. I saw it, and we know what you did. So you ain't going to be getting one on us with this.
Yeah. That was such a great moment. Even the moment where Pare is like, the dog catchers come, and he's like winking at the dog for Thor, and Thor gets upset and starts attacking, so they take him away, and he's like, yeah, I won. He starts hugging his sister, trying to taunt him, and yeah, I really love that movie. It's really, really good.
Well, the thing actually is Ted wanted the dog to actually help end him.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because he saw the dog as his only way out, because the dog was the only one that could sense it, and he's just like, I gotta find a way to get this dog to kill me. Yeah. Like I love the ending too, and when the dog tracks him down, and the dog's growling, but the dog is also hesitant because that's still his master's little brother. But he's
he's back in the human form, and the dog probably realizes he's dying, but he's like, just finish it, and the dog.
He's like, do it.
Yeah.
And the dog just ran up and you don't see what happens, but you can kind of assume that the dog probably tackled him and probably bit him in the throat or something. Yeah. Classic canine move.
Number 3. What is your number 3?
My number 3 is, I think it's probably a tie between Bad Moon and actually, yes, it is going to be Bad Moon because I have my number 2, so I'm going to say what I had for number 3 to number 2 because I realized after rewatching it, I liked it better higher up.
Yeah. My number 3.
So Bad Moon.
Oh, cool deal. My number 3 is a film that, again, around time that Ginger Snaps came out in 2000, somewhere in that range. It was another one that maybe Sci-Fi Channel was playing. Caught it by accident. Fell in love with it immediately. Didn't know why people weren't talking about it at the time. But my number 3 is Dog Soldiers.
Oh, I love that movie too. I was rewatching that so many times over the summer. That one is a classic fan favorite.
Yep.
And
it's funny how over the years it's just become like a cult favorite with everyone. But it took a while to get there. Like I remember in the early 2000s for like almost 5 or so years, just continuing to bring it up to people that were horror fans. And I'm like, have you seen this film? Have you seen this film? And finally people were like, yeah.
Which, of course, for those that don't know, it's an indie film. I forget the director's name, but he's coming out with a new movie called The Lair.
Yep.
And it's so good to see him get some recognition. And the fact that it said director from Dog Soldiers, which shows that actually was a hit. It did, because originally it just came out in the UK theaters. It did come out to the US until later on. Like, it was so disappointing that when I first got Amazon Prime, I immediately tried to find that movie. I found him and said, sorry, not available in this country. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's like one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time. And so finally, over the summer, I'm like, I am getting that. I don't care how much it costs. I need that on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I had it original. I had the original copy of the first time I was on DVD.
Are you
Uh,
a gamer?
not to the extent that some other people are. Like I play, but I play for myself. I don't really. I mean,
Have
I
you
play
played
Wolf.
Have you played the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare series?
But I've heard that they
What?
do have like werewolves or something in it.
Well, here's why I'm asking this. So, to those that may not know, you know Cooper, right? The main
Mhm.
character in Dark Soldiers. The actor behind Cooper is also the voice actor to John Soap McTavish in the original Modern Warfare trilogy.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so I got the original copy way back when, and then recently I got the Blu-ray. And Aaron Penn, who now lives in Morocco, but he was living in Canada, he couldn't get it, and so I actually bought him a copy and sent it to him.
Nice.
Yeah, because he's a big fan of it too. So I'm just glad they finally put it out on Blu-ray because it was really overdue to have that. You're number two.
Dark Soldiers and the Howling. So I'll talk a little bit more on Dark Soldiers. Don't want to go into too much depth because I'm like, I want to save some so I can talk about it. So with Dark Soldiers, my favorite thing about it is just the werewolf design. They look very sleek and agile, but they also look very terrifying and scary because it was just kind of like, again, it was kind of like the Native American mythos of skinwalkers.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Celtic lore that's in there. I love the story too and how they're like tricked into doing this whole entire, this is an exercise to see if these regular soldiers can outdo the spec ops. And really, the spec ops are just using them as bait. And so the Colonel played a really good job as the villain. And so, because at the beginning, you could tell the guy was a major asshole because he's like, kill the dog. And Cooper's like, I ain't going to kill this dog for no reason. And so finally he shot the dog, goes, send him back to his patrol.
Yeah.
And then what I loved about this is that they ran to the zoologist Megan, who helps them out. And just, there was a video I watched that went behind the science of the transformation. And I'm trying to bring that to my own mythology of werewolves as I want to make it, as I feel like every time someone transforms, they should become slightly more, their mental state should become more and more deteriorated. Like they become more and more insane, they become more and more feral as, imagine how much trauma the brain's going through as it expands, then goes back down to normal, expands and goes back down to normal as they're going in and out of the werewolf form. And the fact that they're basically going from like, say, 5'4" to 6 feet tall to like 8 feet tall, so they're like predator height.
Mm-hmm.
And the twist with Megan was pretty nice, though you kind of saw it coming, as there was that moment when she got her hand stabbed by a piece of glass, and I guess some werewolf blood was on there. But earlier, it's like you see her looking out there, you see that ominous music playing, and she's able to see what each one of the werewolf family is. And so you're seeing which one's the alpha man. You're seeing all the rest of them. And you're just like, at that point, some of the viewers probably thinking something bad's about to happen. Because she's over there staring at all of them like come over here or something. But eventually you find out she's been fighting a metamorphosis this whole time. And I actually have a theory about it. And so many people keep thinking she became a werewolf because she got stabbed. Because there was blood on it. But if you go back, she says, do you think I chose to be part of this effed up family? No, they chose me. And it's
I always figured she was part of the family in some way, like just from the beginning. But like Go ahead.
I was going to say, my theory is she did too much snooping around. She ran into something she shouldn't have. Because she mentioned that they're good, kind people, so I think they probably ran into her. And they've been allowed to stay in to probably do some, because she says she wanted to become one with nature, like, oh, we can help you out. And she might have, I say she probably stumbled upon their basement and she found the remains. And they just said, well, you got two options. Either you become one of us or you will be tonight's main course.
Yeah.
And so she was kind of forced to become a werewolf. Otherwise, she would end up becoming devoured by them. And it's nice, too, because earlier they come into the cabin, And I always found it to be amazing how they're like, there is a reason why they're not leaving us alone. It's because we're in their home. And it's like, that makes sense. We sleep in their bed, we bring it to their house, we eat their porridge. No wonder they're pissed off at us. But what was interesting was before that, they were helping themselves to a meal. And someone mentioned it seems like it's pork. And here's where I'm not sure you're aware of this, but apparently it's been scientifically proven that the closest to human meat is pork. And so that was kind of a nice touch because later on, the guy that was eating it actually throws up because he was actually not feeling well afterwards. So someone thinks after he ate too much, it was undercooked. I'm like, it could be because he was ingesting human meat.
Yeah.
And
yeah, the cool thing about this film, and I thought when I think about it, it's like it's got a nice mixture of comedy because the one guy that's the bait basically in the movie when he goes out and runs around, he is a trip, man. He has me laughing the entire film.
Oh, he was probably the fan favorite.
Yeah, did you notice though at the beginning, because it also has a similar scene to Bad Moon where there's a couple in a tent, and a similar thing happens in that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this film is just it's so fun. Like it's so fun. It's not super long. It doesn't drag on. It just gets to the point. You find out that there's two patrols out there basically playing capture the flag. The colonel is the first one. His team gets ripped up, and then the other group comes with Cooper, and then they find out that they were under attack, and they get under attack. So it's chaos, and it's great, and it works.
Yeah, I think Spoon definitely had the baddest moment in all, just because at the end he literally was almost being that way with the death of the frying pan. And finally the other one grabs him, and he has no idea. He's like, "Uh-oh!" Then he gets grabbed, and he goes, "I hope I give you the shits."
Yeah. He's like the best freaking character, man. Oh my god!
Like he was definitely the comic relief and just a wisecrack. Like he just didn't give a crap.
Everyone's like picking up weapons, and he picks up his machine gun. He's like, "I'm solved."
Yep. And then also, I loved the sergeant's sacrifice at the end because he knew he was getting ready to turn. He goes, "Get down there now!" And at first, he was getting ready to light a lighter, and the werewolves already knew and slapped it out of his hand. He goes like, "Well," and then just blows him up.
So you said your second film was The Howling.
Yep, The Howling. After watching that, it's very good and very well done. The transformation scene is good. I feel like they had some inspirations to the Happy Face Killer, or I think it's also known as the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah, makes sense. What is it? Richard Ramirez, is that right? Is that the name of the killer, the stalker?
Eddie Quest.
Well, I mean, the actual killer I was thinking of, Ramirez.
Oh, I have no idea. I'll probably have to look into that.
But yeah, Eddie was the guy in the film. And yeah, you're right. He has that similarity of that, almost like a Manson-like type thing going on there.
I kind of like what they did with the werewolves as well, as it's kind of like, so the lady, I forget her name. Oh yeah, here it is, Dee Wallace. She kind of gets traumatized by the whole experience, that she's just flipping out and freaking out and everything. That this doctor goes, "Hey, go to my cabin up here. You can stay for the week to have clear your mind out." So eventually they ran into all these strange and weird characters. By the way, it seems your camera's kind of skipping out and everything. But also it seems like they run into all these weird and strange characters. And eventually, this woman, I forget her name, but she is starting to try to flirt with Bill, her husband. And he's like, "Get away from me," and stuff like that. They hear these howlings, and he's like, "We should get out there and investigate." And Bill's just like, "Go back to sleep. It's probably nothing in the wilderness." He's like, "You're from Los Angeles. The most wild thing you've ever seen is a stray dog," or something like that. Yeah. He's like, "Go back to sleep." And
yeah,
so,
I thought that concept was pretty cool because you got this guy who's a psychiatrist who brings him to his retreat, and he's like trying to train these people not to be their wild side. So he knows what they are, but he's like trying to
kind of set them up.
Right. And then they're finally like, you know what, dude? Fuck you. We're just gonna be what we are. We're gonna go fucking kill these motherfuckers that keep trying to fuck with us. And,
Yeah, because it turned out it was supposed to help them control the werewolf form, be able to change in and out.
yeah.
I did kind of like that change. It was a nice touch. And I think one of the funny moments is just when Terry, or Carrie, I think her name is, she's over there looking at the fire because she calls her sheriff friend, or her other friend is like an investigator. He goes, try to search for fires up there, and I'll try to come over when I can. She's over there trying to find Eddie Quest. All of a sudden, you see this werewolf just come out of nowhere, handle like this file.
Yeah.
To me, that was just a Three Stooges moment, as I feel like that would definitely have sold and got people laughing. That was the Three Stooges. Because I can just imagine like Mo just being like, "Oh, thanks," yeah. And he's just like getting the eyes all big, and he takes off that, and the werewolf's just trying to kill them afterwards.
Well, see, that's one of the topics that I was going to get to, because I find it interesting when we talk about werewolf lore and, of course, movies that we've seen. The way that they approach werewolves sometimes is different. So some movies, the werewolves, say like Bad Moon, American Werewolf in London, the werewolf is just beast. It has no real thought process. It's just uncontrollable. It's just going to kill. Now, the Howling or even Dog Soldiers, it seems there's a sense of intelligence there, and they can actually are very cognizant of what's going on around them. So the case you just pointed to is one that I was going to point to, where one of my favorite scenes is the chick is sitting there talking to her boyfriend about the files in the cabinet, and all of a sudden you just see that hand that's a wolf come by saying, I'll take that from you. And she's like, oh my God, I'm literally standing in front of a werewolf, and I don't know if I need to shit my pants or what do I got to do here.
I think it wasn't the werewolf attempted a pimp slap on her.
Right. And it's crazy because you don't really think about it when you're watching the movie, but they have a sense of intelligence behind them. So they know exactly everything that's going on. And it's pretty cool to see that. And again, the transformations in the Howling are just outstanding.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like all bubbly. It doesn't look painful, but it definitely look like it's burning. The only parts where it seems like it's painful is when you see the claws start growing out. You're seeing the blood and all of that thing. You're hearing bones crackle and just seeing the ears just form up. That's the part that really got me going, ugh. Just because I'm like, out of all things, that one seemed the most painful just by how they did it. I feel like there could have been more more bones cracking, and we could have been seeing like, I mean, the chest expanding, I kind of like when he was just doing this, and every time the chest was just popping out more and more.
Yeah. Well, my number two is, and it looks like you and I are probably reversed here. My number two is American Wolf in London. And again, another great transformation scene, one of the most legendary ones with David Naughton. And this film, again, it's one of those films where I battle with it just because it has that comedy aspect about it. But at the same time, the actual werewolf attacks and the gore, it's all pretty terrifying. Like it's happens.
Really wonderfully done.
Yeah. I always remember the moment that the two people are outside their friend's apartment building or whatever, and they're getting ready to go in for dinner, and they're kind of just smoking and shooting the shit, and all of a sudden the wolf just comes out of nowhere, and it scared the shit out of me as a kid. So then like I switched the channel, but I'm so curious that I switched it back, and there I see it's like chewing and gnawing and tearing at the flesh, and switch it back to another show, come back to it. And I'm like, as a kid, you're just like, you don't want to watch it, but you do want to watch it. And so it's like,
it's kind of hilarious as it's kind of like trying to change the subject. Right. It's kind of in perfect sense. It's kind of like in perfect sync.
Yeah. So I mean, I do love American Werewolf in London. It just a little bit short of my number one, really. And in fact, I could almost put them both at number one and not be mad about it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things.
Yeah. It's just more like what you prefer or if it had everything you were wanting.
Right. And so as it comes to number one, the Howling for me, it's a lot darker, and that's part of the reason why I like it, because it doesn't really mess around. You do have some small comedy bits in there sprinkled in, but it's mostly just continued darkness and depression, and it never really lets up until like the end, when she's of course being sarcastic, ordering that steak, the burger. But yeah, the Howling is my number one. It is, and I'm sure American Werewolf is your number one.
Yep, American Werewolf in London is my number one. It's not merely the comedy; it's just how it encapsulated David's struggle.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I liked about it, is that it was not only wasn't in the point of view of the werewolf, but we actually got to see what most movies fail to do nowadays, except for 2010's The Wolfman. It was to capture the struggle the person himself was having, because at first David wakes up and his friend Jack is coming back from the dead, in which I actually have a theory on what was going on in that sequence. My theory is he was actually hallucinating through the trauma and the guilt for leaving his friend for dead. Because I think he got attacked, David immediately ran off, and then tried to run back, and then got attacked by the werewolf again. So I'm thinking.
Do you think that was just like later on he has the similar thing when he's in the theater and there's like more people, more of his victims there? Do you think that's just an added part of the hallucination for him?
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's in his state of mind, because it's his guilt. It's like in his mind, he feels guilty because he knows he did this and it was out of his control. But also, if you look, you see Jack even more decay, like you actually see his skull.
Yeah.
So I feel like that could be more as in his mind was going more and more feral. His mind was going more and more nuts as each time he was transforming, and each time he was like, I gotta get out of here, I gotta get out of here. Because there was one moment when he actually tried to turn himself in. He was like, officer, I killed these people, and what was the nurse's name? Sue or something?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And she's like, no, David, stop. It's like, sorry, he's kind of going crazy and everything. I'm trying to help him. Because eventually he finally transformed. It was like, David, the doctor can help you. Because, like, again, throughout the movie, we're just seeing his struggle. But again, what was so wonderfully done was just his werewolf transformation and the werewolf design. I just wish it was more bipedal, like the werewolf could switch between quadrupedal and bipedal at the same time.
Right.
Because what I liked about it was, the funny thing, I remember watching this scene a while back. It was the subway scene where this businessman comes back. All of a sudden, he hears this growling, and he's like, huh? And then he hears it again. He goes like, I can assure you this isn't the least bit of funny.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes like, I'll be reporting this to the authorities. And then he starts running up, and then finally he's like, bloody hell, because he realizes that there wasn't a prank. There was actually some monster actually coming for him.
Yeah, I really love that scene on the escalator when he's up there, and then down at the below, you could just see the wolf crawling.
You just see him just slowly creeping towards him, and you don't see anything after that, but it's fairly safe to assume what happened.
Yeah. I mean but I like that aspect of it, because it gave you a quick glimpse of the wolf, and even though it was far away, you were like, oh shit, that's a big wolf,
Yeah. Also, before that, when there was the hobos just around the fire, when they're like, hey, I think Jack found, I forget the dog's name. It's like, oh, I think you found something. Then you hear this growl. It's like, that's not Winston. Yeah, I think his name was Winston. It's like, that's not Winston. It's like, Winston, get over here. And then all of a sudden, this wolf face just comes out of nowhere and growls. Fun fact, that wasn't the original intent. The original version was they were supposed to show the wolf actually coming in and killing them and ripping them to shreds. But they found that the audience didn't have that reaction they were looking for. So they changed it to when it, like right as soon as the hobos realized what was going on, you just see half the wolf's face and just that growl at the subway station. And they saw that it had the best effect, as they gave you that jump scare also and let you know, yep, they're done.
Yeah, they did that a couple times. Like I said, the scene with the people outside the apartment, you see the wolf rip it into the victims, but it's not like a real long time. And then again in the theater when he transforms and everything, when the ticket guy comes in and he's got his flashlight, and then he finally comes upon the werewolf, and it's tearing into a victim. It's not for a super long time, but it's effective enough that it's like it's going to jar you, much like you saw that picture, that GIF I showed. This one,
Yeah, that was. I always loved that because you actually got to see the werewolf in full glory,
Yeah,
finally
yeah,
seeing what it looked like, and just the guy was. That was when the police officer was like, "Oh crap!" and ran out, and he started getting things down. It was like, "Don't go in there. There's a monster in there." And there was a comment I saw on YouTube as well that said that's probably the most realistic, as the cops are trying to get the public out of the way. They're trying to get them clear. They're like, get out of here, because they're trying to hold the door down. And then as soon as the inspector shows up, he gets his head ripped off. And then all the casualties that happened after that was just people panicking. Like, they had one person that got ran over, one person that hit a bus, and a person goes flying out the bus window and then gets ran over.
Yeah.
Like, everything after that was just calamity, just caused by people panicking. I just found that so hilarious.
Yeah, it was just kind of snapping, but it wasn't really attacking anybody unless they were close enough. So everyone's like just running around, and it's like a dog pretty much in the street. My number one, of course, is the Howling. And I was talking with you a little bit off camera. The final transformation scene for Dee Wallace's character has always been kind of a thorn in the side for some werewolf movie fans, because they didn't like the way that she looked when she transformed. But as time has gone on, I've sat there and you and I were talking. We come to pretty much the same conclusion. The reasons why she doesn't look like the rest of the wolves that we've seen in the film. And basically, it just all comes down to her character as a human being, her emotions of when she's exposing what's going on out there in national TV. And I think there's also the part of it. She knows that she has her friend who's got the gun, and she knows she's going to die. So there's a lot of emotions conflicting in her, but she knows she has to do it.
Yeah, it was like, again, she was probably the most innocent character throughout the entire movie. She's went through the most trauma. She's one trying to get to the bottom of it, just trying to get herself back to normal. That not only that, she was also the one with the least amount of lust. Because I saw a video theory that basically the Howling is actually encapsulates lust and how people deal with lust. So like at the beginning, we see a guy literally thinking she was a hooker, and he goes like half and half, and she goes, get away. And she's like, I don't want any of that. She's walking away, refusing that lust. And then at the end, we kind of see it, because there was the theory that when she was crying, that was actually her last bit of humanity, as she's looking at her friend to shoot her, because she's like, kill me now. And again, the reason why she looks so different is just because she was still the most human out of all of them. She's the one that didn't let her lust to become this wolfish monster to attack and kill and eat people. She wanted to retain her humanity, and she knew she was going to die, but she was hoping her friend would do the right thing and finally shoot her, which is why she looked so different.
Yeah, she came out looking kind of like a Shih Tzu, which was unfortunate. But one thing I really do like about that particular scene, though, is her first, like when she's just starting to turn and she's kind of screaming. She's got these, and it happens. You see it with some of the other ones, but mainly with her, the silver eyes. Like, that was so cool. I don't know how they did that effect, but man, that was really effective and just screamed at you like, wow.
Yeah, she was the only one that screamed, because every other werewolf growled or didn't make any sound. You just heard kind of like crackling, growling in there. But with her, she was actually screaming the entire time. But it also shows more that she was trying to resist that metamorphosis.
Yep. So when it comes to some of our runner-ups, I've got a little bit of a list. I know we talked a couple of them already. Brotherhood of the Wolf, Wolfen, Trick or Treat, Underworld series you mentioned. There's a movie called Full Eclipse with Mario Van Peebles that I really like. When it comes to the Howling series, I kind of put up with Howling 2, but not as much as I like. It's really just a Howling and maybe Howling 5, which kind of gets back to that original wolf look. And plus, the atmosphere in the castle is really nice. I don't know if you ever saw that one or not.
No, I tried to watch the second one, and I'm like,
Yeah, it's
no.
not a good one. The other stuff
is it is when they try to make a huge series and they kind of don't go by what the original movie was like.
Right, yeah, they really kind of screwed the pooch through a lot of those sequels. Howling 5 is a little bit better than most of them. The Wolf of Snow Hollow we talked about, and also Jack Nicholson's Wolf is a really good film. The other ones I would just mention is Werewolves Within, if you want to have a little bit of fun with laughs. Company of Wolves.
Yeah, I think that one is the new one that's a comedy.
Yeah. The Beast Must Die, that's from the 70s. That's a unique take on the werewolf lore. Of course, we did a Versus with American Wolf in Paris. I like that one to a degree.
I saw that on Fat Samurai's Guy's channel.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the wolves so much. I just kind of like the comedy in it, and it's pretty fun in that aspect. The Wolfman that you mentioned with Del Toro, that's a very good one. And yeah, those are ones I would say that are at least worth checking out. I did check out I Am Lisa, Werewolf Castle, Howlers, and Direwolf, and The Hunting. Forget about all those. None of them are good.
Yeah, I thought about looking at The Hunting because I'm like, you know what? I have a feeling The Howling was an inspiration. I mean, the title is just similar, and even just the poster itself is kind of similar.
The poster art work, they had 3 different poster art for that movie, and they're all amazing. Like, I literally have them printed up and put up on my back if I would. It's just that the film just is very literally about the werewolf, and the werewolf sucks. It's bad. Too bad. It's too bad. It's a missed opportunity, I think, and they really put a lot of work in those art pieces, and I really like the artwork in those films, but nope.
Would be maybe the first Ginger Snaps movie, Van Helsing, and the Underworld series, because I felt like the Underworld series could have done a better job. I felt like instead of it being like a vampire trying to kill these werewolves, like Celine being the good guy, finding out everything, I felt like the entire time it should have been kept neutral. Then maybe each side decides, you know what, we want to help stop this once and for all because we're tired of this crap too. Which is why I'm so disappointed when I saw Lucian and Vase die. Yep. I'm like, they did Vase so dirty. He deserved a more glorified death than what he got.
An excellent point, because for a long time I didn't even know if Vase was dead. Like, watching the film, like, you know that he's out there, but like he's in wolf form, so there's really no way to know which wolf is dying because a lot of them are dying. So when it happens, and you're kind of like saying, "Was that Ray? Like, is he gone now? Like, what's the deal?" And then he brought up Lucian. Like, I love Rise of the Lycans, but along with Celine, like, I would have liked to have Lucian kind of last throughout the series because he was like such an integral part of trying to bring balance to both sides. That was his whole point. That's why he was doing it. He was in love with the vampire.
Yeah, he should have been kept alive because he was trying to help bring peace. He was done dirty too, shot from the back by a silver bullet by Craven.
Craven. That dude didn't die horribly enough.
The funny thing is, Craven means coward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the ironic part.
What do you think of William?
William, that's the white werewolf, right?
Yeah.
I liked him. I was just disappointed he was on the vampire side. I felt like Celine should have tried to help snap him out of it. He could have been on their side, helping her. And I forget the guy's name, but he basically became a hybrid between vampire and werewolf, looking more like a werewolf, but just had the bluish skin.
Scott
he was also
Scott Speedman, I think, is the actor. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that werewolf could have helped because I think that werewolf was also a lot stronger than him.
Oh,
but he eventually, because I feel like he just got lucky and managed to just rip his head off. I'm like, that is sad. I'm like, because that's another one I felt like deserved a more glorified death. He literally just like got his head ripped off.
Oh, that was like actually a pretty brutal kill scene because he takes his jaw and just pulls it right off. But
I feel like that werewolf could have been another one they should have tried to help and have recruited, because he is the origin of the werewolves. From what I know of, he's like the first werewolf.
Yeah, I was a little
bit
like surprised too that he didn't possess the ability to change back, so he was always just that. But he was very cool. I really liked that wolf a lot.
Same here.
Let's see. Okay, so we discussed a little bit with CGI versus practical effects. I think you and I agree that practical is the way to go, regardless.
Yeah, I feel like practical. I say no matter what you're doing. I mean, let's put it like this: if you want to make sure, if you want to put your heart and soul into making one of the most memorable transformation scenes, 75 to 90% practical, and then 25 to 10% CGI. Just use this. Make it all practical, but use the CGI to kind of crisp and clean it up to make it a little bit more realistic. We're also trying to make it seem a little bit more real.
Mm-hmm. So before we cut this out for the night, I did want to see if you wanted to talk a little bit, because I know I mentioned to you in private talks that years ago when I was in Colorado, I was telling you that, sorry, I'm pouring myself more beer. I was with a friend of mine that was living with me at the time, and we decided to come up with a script called The Other Side. And I was writing it from the werewolf point of view. He was writing it from the vampire point of view. And it had a similar vibe to Underworld. But as I told you, we never stuck with it. We never did anything with it. And I don't even know where that script is now. It's probably trash, or somebody found it and used it. I don't know. But regardless to say, I think I missed my opportunity to make that movie, which became Underworld, because it was very similar in theme. Between the war between werewolves and vampires. It even included another breed of wolves called the Wolfen that were just what they were. But you had sent me a story that you wrote, so I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, what it's about, what your plans are with it going forward, and all that.
Well, I'll just explain a little bit. So in college, I took a class called Creative Writing Short Stories. I'm trying to think of the guy's name now, but I really like Dr. Craig Albin, great teacher. And what I try to do is, so the qualification is you had to give the character a struggle and just make it realistic. So like it didn't have to be like full and realistic. You can make it fantasy, but the character's actions, what they did through the actions, everyone's reactions, and how they behaved had to be believable. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do an epistolae, which is a story in the form of journal entries, but in the perspective of a werewolf, because I want to try to encapsulate more of the struggle. Because I'm like, I really like, as a way, it's like my little love letter, how I would like to see a werewolf movie done. No matter if the person's the protagonist or the antagonist, I like to see the side of the person who's struggling as the werewolf. And so one thing I try to do is, what if no one knew werewolves existed? Because you saw, like, the guy, my mercenary, was confused the entire way. He didn't know what was going on with him. He just knew he was fighting this wolfish monster. He got wounded. The next day, his wound healed. His hair grew slightly longer, and his nails and canines started having more of a sharper appearance to them. Even his eyes have been, his ears slightly got a little bit more pointed. And so I want to show a little bit of the side effects. And as he's walking through the village and towns and everything, people are looking at him a little bit more weird, because they're noticing, like, this guy isn't looking like the way he does anymore. And so eventually I wanted to also capture how painful the transformation would be. So I did my best to make it as bone chilling, spine tingling, just bones cracking, stretching, and breaking, ligaments and muscles tearing and stretching as much as I could, just and capture how painful and how agonizing it would be to transform to a werewolf when that time happened. And the funny thing is, so you notice there was a love interest in there.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got that idea from a good friend of mine's wife, because she noticed in the last short story I did for my class, there was no female character. So she goes, think it'd be cool if you had a female character some way. So I actually put that into thought. So out of her honor, I put that in there because I'm like, okay, let's challenge myself and see if I can do that. And I did my best. In a way, you could say it was a little bit rushed, but I did my best to try to make it organic, even though it probably wasn't for a bit. And I thought it would be a great twist that through her, he finds out he's a werewolf unintentionally. So now he realizes, oh, she's in danger. Because now he's realizing this is why all this has happened. This is why these weird things keep happening. This is why I'm acting strange. Because there were points to like when he saw the dead kids, his mind immediately went feral at that moment, tried to eat the kids. Because I want to show like it had to be, his mind should be retaining some of that animal instinct since that's inside him. But he also is fighting against it because he's like, I can't do this. What the heck am I doing? And so that's basically what I wanted to try to do, is show, because I got the dream part from Skyrim, as when you're a werewolf, you don't get resting bonuses because you're hearing the growling, the howling, the call of the pack, and the blood, because it's Hersing, the danger prince behind lycanthropy, that's calling you to the hunting ground. But instead, I also got this from the Beast of Darkness from Berserk. So it's like, because the large wolf I have in there is based off of the Beast of Darkness, except it's flaming orange eyes. And just he said, yield to me, yield. And each time you see more and more people added to this pile for his pack to feast on. Until finally he comes in full circle. And he finally decides, you know what, there's only one way out of this. As the townspeople are attacking him, I have to allow myself to give in, otherwise I'm going to die. And then now he's deciding that now because he burns down his house, he burns down everything. He's like, until I can control this, I might as well be dead, because as long as I stick around here, people are going to keep coming after me. So I'm going to have to retreat into the mountains or somewhere. So now I'm going to do I'm thinking about doing a sequel and showing more of that and basing it off of Guts' struggle with his inner malice, which is the Beast of Darkness. And I have a friend who is doing his own story, not Werewolf, but basically it's the 4 guys we game with. So it's him, my friend Redbeard the Great, Spy Stingray 62, and our friend who does a bunch of art on TikTok. And so he has me as a berserker warrior, but I can also transform into a werewolf. But the thing is, it's not like, if you ever played Elden Ring, there was a wolf-man creature known as Blide, something like that. So like, you'll have the appearance of a wolf, but it'll be humanoid. But I'm like trying to make it to where once I get to a certain point, I get out of control and feral. Like make it to where I may have had control over myself, but I still haven't fully controlled myself. And the funny thing is that video mentioned like some people get it through cursed by mythological gods because of what they did. And that's what happens to my character. He goes to ransack this temple and raid it, and it angers the deity within it that I get cursed as a werewolf, that I killed my entire raiding party. And so I told him, so I showed him this video on Berserk and the Beast of Darkness. I said, I want you to do your best to base it off of this, because I feel that's the best way to encapsulate the struggle of someone who's a werewolf. Because if you ever seen or read the manga Berserk, that beast really tries to get out of Guts, and that causes him to go into the Berserker armor mode, which, once that happens, he loses control of everything. So like, one thing that happens is it'll open his wounds, while also creating new ones, because it's actually allowing him to perform beyond peak physical and human conditioning, to the point to where he's swinging a large sword that he can swing it already fast and powerful, but in that armor, he's doing it so fast and strong that it's actually ripping his muscles apart and breaking his bones, that the Berserker armor has that that it'll send spikes to pierce into him to hold his body in place. So in turn, it's also slowly killing him because it's also causing him to bleed out. That the more he fights, the more he's going to lose himself.
Sounds like a pretty interesting story.
It is. And the Berserker armor also connects to his inner demon. So the helmet is a skull, but it eventually morphs into the Beast of Darkness head, that when he fights, he at times fights like a wolf. Because there was one time to when the helmet actually grabs someone as if it's a wolf grabbing someone with its teeth and starts shaking him around with his jaws, ripping him apart, as he's also fighting with his sword.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
well, man, I
awesome.
appreciate you taking the time and hanging out with me and talking this werewolf stuff. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem. Actually, we forgot one more topic: smart werewolves versus just raging beasts.
Yeah, well, we did talk a little bit about it when we talked about the Howling and how they were a little bit more intelligent and how they were handling it as opposed to like American Wolf in London, where it's just kind of running around.
My opinion, it should be a mix. Like, say, if it's going to be solely action, raging beast all the way, because that's what's going to sell crowds and audiences. If it's going to be strictly horror and suspense, we need smart werewolves because we want them to be more cunning and be like in Silver Bullet and the Wolfman. We want them to be a little bit more cunning as they're trying to hunt down their victims and kill their enemies.
Yeah.
Let's say like in Dog Soldiers, make them a mix. Raging beast, but also they're able to think and be able to function like an animal trying to hunt their prey.
Yeah.
Like in Dog Soldiers, they were a pack.
Mm-hmm.
They found ways to get into the house. They found ways to kind of flush people out and kill them. Like, my favorite part was when the guy comes in to get the vehicle and he sees the werewolf getting his friend. He's like, oh, crap. And then the werewolf rips off the head and throws it at him.
Yeah.
And so he's like, screw this, and just floors it out reverse, gets to the house, and he goes like, and then the movie gives you a hint as you just see his breath. He's like, you're behind me, aren't you? And he's like, oh, screw this. He goes over there and tries to kill him. Then he just gets ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
So I feel like my opinion, there should be a mix. They should be raging, but also make them very smart. Because look at grizzly bears. Tigers. Tigers are incredibly aggressive animals, but they are also very smart.
Yeah.
Same with grizzly bears. They are aggressive, but they're also described as being so smart that it's scary.
Yeah.
So let's say make the werewolf a mix between both, and you got a good werewolf. But say if it's solely horror and suspense, smart all the way. If it's completely action, raging beasts all the way.
I agree with that. Yeah, and just work on more practical effects, less CGI.
Yeah, more practical effects. Again, 75 to 90% practical, 25 to 10% CGI, so it can have crispy image and make it a little bit more like in real life time.
Yep. All right. Well, for those of you that are following me out there, tomorrow I'll be on Sci-Fi Channels with Sci-Fi Century talking the first 2 seasons of Castlevania. If you're into that kind of stuff with Netflix, and then I'll have Lone Wolf with Dub coming up soon with Lone Wolf Ronin talking 7 Grandmasters. I'm not sure when that's happening yet, but I'll have it there. For the rest of you, I hope you enjoy Halloween and your weekend. Stay out of the moonlight. And Big Bad Wolf, sir, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Hang around before we leave. I'm going to close this out, and then I'll talk to you, and then we'll let you go.
All right.
Thank you, buddy.
Being on here. Thanks for having me.
It's been a blast. So hold on 1 second. For the rest of you, keep it metal. Talk at you later, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.